You know, people assume betrayal comes loud. They expect slammed doors, neighbors overhearing shouting through thin walls, somebody storming out with suitcases. But mine, it came quiet. The kind of quiet that seeps under your skin and settles in your bones. It was a Thursday morning in Maple Falls, Ohio. The kind of town where the church bells ring at noon, whether you want them to or not, where the high school football team still makes the front page, and where folks will wave at you, even if they can't stand you. I'd lived there my whole life. People thought they knew me down to the last detail. They didn't. That morning, I was standing in the back storeroom of Dunn's Hardware, the little shop my late husband Frank and I built with our own hands. The place still smelled like sawdust and motor oil, a mix that always reminded me of him. Those shelves out front, he cut every board himself. The squeaky screen door, I painted it sunshine yellow because I wanted the place to feel welcoming. 40+ years of our lives were inside those walls. I was looking for a box of twine when I heard voices drifting from the front counter. My son's voice. Noah. I paused, thinking he was talking to a customer. But then I caught his words. "No, Vanessa," he muttered sharp and low. "Mom can't keep running this place. She's old. She doesn't even know how to use the new register software. It's embarrassing." Embarrassing. I froze my hand, gripping the box so tight the cardboard gave way. Vanessa's laugh followed, high and sweet but sharp as glass. She always had that laugh, the kind you'd expect to hear in some country club dining room, not in our hardware store. "She should just move out of that drafty house by the river," she said. "Honestly, Noah, it's not fair you're stuck managing her and this outdated business. She needs a retirement home." That word. Retirement. It landed on me heavier than a brick. I braced myself against the wooden shelf. My wedding ring scraped the grain, and for a second, I thought about Frank. About the day we opened the store. He'd squeezed my hand and whispered, "This place will keep us safe, Rachel. You and me against the world." He believed it. I did too. And now here I was, standing in the back, overhearing my son and his wife plot my expiration date. I wanted to storm out, to slam my hands on the counter and remind them who scrubbed those floors and balanced those books for decades. But instead, I stayed hidden in the shadows, my throat burning, like I'd swallowed something bitter, because deep down, part of me wondered if they were right. I did fumble with the new computer system Noah brought in. The receipt printer hated me. I still kept the real records in the same old leather ledger Frank bought back in '83. Pages full of ink, his handwriting at the start, mine filling in the rest. Customers' debts paid off, slowly notes about seasons when the farmers came in thin but hopeful. That book was history. My history. And yes, the house by the river was old. The furnace rattled when it kicked on. The roof needed patching. Winter nights creaked with the sound of age. But what they never understood was, I still mattered. I knew every customer's name. I knew that Mr. Barlow, who farmed soybeans, preferred a certain brand of bolts for his tractors. I knew that young Danny from across the tracks came in every spring to buy fishing gear with the dollars he saved from mowing lawns. I knew which tools were worth repairing and which ones to throw out. Knowledge you can't Google. And yet in one morning conversation, I was reduced to inconvenient, a burden, something to be managed. I backed away from the shelf, heart pounding. Slipped out the side door into the January air. The river was half frozen, sunlight hitting the ice in shards. It looked like broken glass scattered as far as you could see. My breath made clouds in the cold, and I thought, so this is how it ends. Tossed aside in my own store, my own family treating me like clutter. You don't forget the sting of being dismissed, not by strangers, by your own child. I walked home slow, my boots crunching in the snow, past the diner where Mrs. Lowell was pouring coffee for the regulars. She waved. I waved back. Nobody could tell my world had just shifted on its axis. At the house, I set my coat on the hook by the door and sat at the kitchen table. The table Frank and I bought at a yard sale in '79. It had scratches from Noah's school projects and burn marks from all the Thanksgiving turkeys that had gotten a little too crispy. I laid my hands flat against that wood and I cried. Just for a minute. Quiet tears no one saw. But then I noticed something. That old ledger book was sitting on the counter right where I left it after doing last week's numbers. Its leather cover worn smooth by decades of use. I wiped my face and picked it up. Flipped through the pages. There was Frank's writing again, neat and steady, first sale hammer, $3.25. And then mine years later, Barlow account paid in full. So many names, so many memories. But here's what most folks didn't know, that ledger wasn't just sentimental. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was legal. Buried in those pages were records, signatures, even proof of ownership that tied the business to me. Not Noah, not Vanessa. Me. They didn't know it. They never asked. But one day, I thought one day soon, that book would remind them whose name really built this life. For now, though, I closed it gently and set it back on the counter. I made myself a cup of coffee, strong and bitter, and stared out the window at the frozen river. No one saw the tears still drying on my cheeks. And no one saw the fire starting to burn in my eyes either. If Act 1 was the wound, Act 2 was the scar forming. The part no one sees because you learn to hide it under sleeves and polite smiles. After that Thursday morning in the hardware store, I stopped expecting kindness from Noah or Vanessa. I stopped expecting much of anything, really. What I did instead was watch. You learn a lot by keeping your mouth shut. People think silence means weakness. But silence, it's where you gather. It's where you store things away. Vanessa took over the front of the store like a stage she'd been waiting for. She'd sweep in with her perfect hair and designer sweaters, smiling at customers like they were props in her performance. And at first, some of them ate it up. So polished, they said. So professional. But it didn't take long before cracks started showing. Like the time old Mr. Barlow came in looking for a replacement part for his tractor. Vanessa blinked at him like he was speaking another language. She pushed him toward some shiny, overpriced tool that wasn't even close to what he needed. I stepped out quietly from the back, handed him the right part, and whispered, "Don't worry, it's on the house." He smiled at me, eyes crinkled. But Vanessa, she didn't even notice. That was how it went, day after day. I became invisible in my own store, but I still knew where everything was, who everyone was, and what kept this town running. At night, I'd go home to the old house by the river. The furnace rattled, the floorboards creaked, but it was mine. I'd sit at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and pull out that ledger book, running my fingers over Frank's handwriting, reminding myself this wasn't just a book. It was proof. It was memory. It was power if I ever chose to use it. I wasn't ready yet. Not quite. Instead, I started doing little things. Quiet things. I went back to teaching piano lessons to the neighbor kids, something I hadn't done since before Frank got sick. My hands weren't as nimble as they used to be, but they still found the keys. The music filled the house again, and in that sound, I remembered I wasn't finished yet. I kept volunteering at the church pantry, stocking shelves, carrying boxes, chatting with folks who came through embarrassed to be there. You'd be surprised how many people in Maple Falls needed help, but didn't want anyone to know. I became the kind of person they could tell things to, and those conversations, they fed me in ways I didn't realize I was starving. And then there was Miss Carroll. Now, if Maple Falls had a backbone, it was her. 69 years old, twice divorced, a retired paralegal who still ran the church women's group like a general. She had a voice that could cut through any nonsense and a kind of laugh that made you feel like you weren't crazy for being alive. I started staying after pantry shifts to help her sort paperwork. That's how it began. One afternoon, she looked at me over her reading glasses and said, "Rachel, you've been awful quiet these days. What's sitting on your chest?" I didn't answer right away. My instinct was to swallow it like always. But something in her eyes told me she already knew. So I told her. Not everything, not yet. Just enough. About Vanessa moving into my house like she owned it. About Noah acting like the store was his birthright. About the whispers of retirement communities. She listened. Really listened. And when I finished, she leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, and said, "Honey, you got more fight in you than you realize. Don't let them bury you alive while you're still breathing." Her words landed in me like a spark to dry wood. So I did something I hadn't done since Frank passed. I asked for help. I asked Miss Carroll to look over the paperwork Frank had left behind. The deeds, the business shares, the ledger. Her eyes narrowed as she flipped through the pages. "Rachel," she said finally, "do you understand what you're sitting on here?" I shook my head. She tapped the book. "This ledger isn't just memory, it's record. And the property deed, it's still in your name. Not Noah's, not Vanessa's. Yours. What they think they're standing on belongs to you." My hands trembled not from fear, but from something else. Relief, maybe. Clarity. That night, I walked home different. The snow crunched under my boots, and the cold didn't sting quite so much. For the first time in months, I felt like I wasn't drifting. I had ground beneath me. But I didn't rush. I didn't storm into the house and shout. That's not my way. Instead, I let them keep talking. Because the more people like Noah and Vanessa think they've won, the less careful they become. And I needed them unguarded. So I listened. I listened when Vanessa bragged at the salon that she'd be redecorating the store soon, making it more modern. I listened when Noah told a friend at the diner that he was thinking of taking out a loan against the business to buy a bigger house. I listened when they both complained about how much work it was to keep me managed like I was livestock instead of family. Every word they spoke dug their own hole deeper. And I kept every detail tucked away. Meanwhile, I kept showing up, teaching piano, stocking the pantry shelves, tending my garden even in the cold, trimming the roses I'd planted the year Noah graduated high school. Everyone thought I was just passing time, but in truth, I was rebuilding myself. I started running again, just short jogs by the river. My breath came heavy, my knees complained, but each step reminded me I was still strong. I started reading at night business books, not novels. I brushed up on what I'd ignored all those years while Frank handled the accounts. And I prayed in my own quiet way. Not for them to change. That ship had sailed. I prayed for strength to face what was coming. One night, I found myself flipping through the ledger again, and there it was. Frank's handwriting steady and certain. Property secured. Ownership confirmed. And in that moment, I swear I heard his voice. "Don't let anyone take from you what we built together." So I closed the book and whispered back, "I won't." They thought I was fading. What I was really doing was sharpening. And when the day came, because I knew it would when they pushed me too far, I would be ready. For now, I stayed quiet. But silence doesn't mean surrender. Sometimes silence is the sound of a storm gathering strength. You ever notice how the biggest betrayals rarely happen in private? It's like some people need an audience. They want others to see their power, their control, their version of the truth. For me, that stage was the Maple Falls Winter Fundraiser, held every February in the high school gym. The same gym where Noah once scored the winning touchdown and the whole town lifted him on their shoulders. Back then, I clapped so hard my hands went numb. This time, those same bleachers would hold a different memory. The fundraiser was a big deal in town raffles pie auction speeches, the kind of place where everyone brought their best smiles and their best gossip. Noah had been asked to say a few words about continuing the family legacy, since Dunn's Hardware had been a fixture on Main Street for decades. Vanessa, of course, treated the night like it was her coronation. She showed up in a red dress that looked more suited for a gala than a small-town gym, her hair swept up like she was running for office. She had her hand looped through Noah's arm, as if to remind everyone she was the new face of the Dunn family. And me, I wore my navy coat, the one with the missing button, and sat near the back. Not because I wanted to hide, but because I wanted to watch. I could feel eyes on me. Whispers. She looks tired. Poor thing, must be hard letting go. Isn't Noah taking over now? People never say things straight to your face. But in a small town, silence is never really silence. The night moved along Raffles the choir singing the mayor, telling one of his long-winded jokes. Then Noah walked to the podium. My boy tall like his father, jaw clenched in concentration. I remembered the little boy who used to tug at my apron strings, asking me for one more story before bed. And then I remembered his voice saying I was embarrassing. "Good evening, Maple Falls," he began. The crowd clapped. Vanessa beamed. As many of you know, our town is built on tradition. Families who stay, who work hard, who pass down businesses from one generation to the next. My father built Dunn's Hardware, and I'm proud to say I'm carrying it into the future. The words were knives. Because Frank and I built that store. Me and him together. Long nights, sore backs, balancing the books on that kitchen table, while Noah slept down the hall. But Noah kept talking, rewriting history in front of everyone. My mom, she did her best. But it's time for change. The store needs modernization, new leadership. We're preparing for a fresh start. There it was. That quiet erasure. The dismissal wrapped in polite phrasing. The crowd clapped again, some hesitant, some glancing at me. Vanessa took that as her cue. She stood holding Noah's hand and called out, "And we've also been talking about what's best for Rachel. She's ready for a new chapter too, somewhere more comfortable, somewhere appropriate for her age." A ripple of awkward laughter spread through the room. And I sat very still. Inside, though, something snapped. Because humiliation has a tipping point. And mine had just been reached. I stood, slowly, my chair scraping against the wooden floor. The sound carried across the gym like thunder. Heads turned, conversation stilled. My voice when it came was calm. Steady. "May I say something?" Noah froze. Vanessa's smile flickered, then returned tighter. "Of course, Rachel," she chirped. "Everyone would love to hear from you." Would they? I wondered. Or were they expecting me to nod politely, thank them for their generosity, and fade into the background? I walked to the front, my heels echoing on the gym floor. Took the microphone from my son's trembling hand. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't look small. "I've heard a lot tonight about family legacy," I began. My eyes scanned the room. People leaned forward, curious. I've heard talk of modernization, fresh starts, and what's appropriate for a woman my age. A murmur rippled. Someone coughed. "What most of you don't know," I continued, "is that Frank and I didn't just build a hardware store. We built a life. Every shelf in that place, he hammered it. Every coat of paint, I brushed it on. Every account in that ledger, I wrote with my own hand. For 40 years, we worked side by side, raising a son and serving this town." My hand reached into my bag. I pulled it out, the leather ledger worn and weathered edges fraying. I held it high. And while my son and his wife have been planning my retirement, I've been reading, remembering, and checking the papers they never bothered to ask about. Noah's face went pale. Vanessa blinked like she'd swallowed a lemon. "This book," I said, laying it on the podium, and the deeds attached to it proves something simple. The store isn't theirs to modernize. The property isn't theirs to mortgage. It was mine, legally, entirely. And as of last week, I paused, savoring the silence. It's been sold. The gasp that went through that gymnasium could have lifted the roof. Vanessa's mouth fell open. Noah whispered something, but no sound came out. The crowd erupted in whispers, turning from me to them and back again. Yes, I said, my voice steady. Sold. To a couple who will love it, respect it, and honor what it stood for. A couple who doesn't see me as clutter to be managed, but as a woman who built something worth keeping. I looked right at Vanessa. Her face was crimson now. And as for me, I won't be moving into a retirement home. I've already made my arrangements. I've found my own place. Somewhere by the river, with sunlight in the mornings and space for my garden. Somewhere I chose. Silence, thick and electric. I leaned into the microphone one last time. You told me to find my own place. And I did. The only difference is, I won't be leaving broken. I'll be leaving free. I set the microphone down. The thud echoed like a gavel. And then I walked back down that aisle, ledger in hand head high. The crowd parted. Some avoided my eyes. Others looked at me with something like awe. A few even clapped, hesitant but real. Behind me I heard Noah call Mom, wait, his voice cracking. But I didn't turn around. For the first time in months, I felt taller than my own shadow. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't shouting. It isn't fighting. It's standing in the very space they try to erase you from and showing the truth so bright it blinds them. The thing they don't tell you about breaking points is life doesn't go quiet afterwards. It gets louder. The Monday morning after the fundraiser, Maple Falls was buzzing like a kicked hornet's nest. Folks talked at the diner over their pancakes in the church parking lot, in the line at the post office. Not about the raffle winners. Not about the mayor's long-winded speech. No. They talked about me. Did you hear what Rachel said? She sold it out from under them. Good for her. About time somebody stood up to Vanessa. Poor Noah. Imagine being blindsided like that. Everyone had their version. Some painted me as the villain. Some called me brave. And some just enjoyed the show. That's small-town America for you. No secret stays secret, and no one keeps their mouth shut when blood hits the water. I stayed home that day at my kitchen table, sipping coffee and listening to the phone ring off the hook. Friends calling, some offering congratulations, some fishing for details. Even Helen from across the river stopped by with a casserole whispering, "Honey, the whole town's talking about you like you're a legend." Legend. I'd never thought of myself as that, but I'll admit it felt good after months of being treated like a burden. Noah, though? He didn't come by. Not that day, not the next. It was Wednesday afternoon when I finally saw him. I was trimming back the winter roses in my garden when I heard his old truck crunch into the driveway. He got out slow, his shoulders slumped, his eyes ringed with shadows. "Mom," he started, voice low. I stood, wiped dirt on my gloves, and waited. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice cracked on the words like a boy again. "Tell you what I asked, though, I knew. That you sold the store. That you were planning it all along." I set the clippers down, leaned against the porch rail. "Because, Noah, when I tried to talk before you didn't hear me. You heard what you wanted, that I was old, inconvenient in the way. You told me to find my own place. So I did." His jaw clenched. He looked at the ground. I thought you thought it would always be here. That I would always be here. Holding it together while you played house with Vanessa." At her name, his face flinched. "She hasn't been home since Friday," he admitted, voice small. "Packed a bag, went to her sister's in Columbus. Said she needs space to rethink her future." I almost laughed. Almost. Because wasn't that what she'd been trying to steal from me? My future. "Instead," I said quietly, "maybe now you'll understand what it feels like to be disposable." He winced, but didn't argue. He just stood there, a grown man who looked more like a lost boy than he had in years. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Mom." His voice broke. "I thought I was doing the right thing, making plans for us, for everyone." I shook my head. "Noah, you were making plans for you, and you didn't care what it cost me." Silence stretched between us, heavy as the winter sky. Finally, he whispered, "Is there any way to fix it?" I looked at him. My only son. My boy I once rocked through fevers, and cheered for on Friday nights. My boy, who had betrayed me. "You can't fix what you broke," I said, "but you can learn from it." He nodded, tears clinging to his lashes. Then he turned and left shoulders hunched against a lesson he'd never expected to learn. The fallout didn't stop there. By the weekend, word spread that Vanessa's modern plans for the store were dead. The Hendersons, the sweet couple who'd bought the place, moved in quick. They put up a fresh sign, Henderson Hardware. Established 2024, continuing a tradition. They left Frank's yellow door untouched, though. Said it felt like home. Customers flocked in not just for the tools, but for the story. Everyone wanted to buy from the couple who'd been chosen by me, not the ones who'd tried to erase me. Meanwhile, Vanessa tried to spin things. Claimed I'd been unstable, that I'd tricked Noah. But Maple Falls folks aren't dumb. They'd seen her at the fundraiser, heard her words. Her mask had slipped, and people remembered. By March, she'd stopped showing her face around town. By April, her name wasn't spoken without an eye roll. And me, I started living again. I planted new roses, red ones, bold as blood. I joined Miss Carroll's book club, sitting in her living room with a dozen other women sipping sweet tea and talking about stories that weren't our own, but somehow always were. I even signed up for a pottery class at the community center. My bowls were lopsided, my mugs leaked, but my hands were busy shaping something new, and that was enough. I could feel myself expanding, not shrinking like they'd wanted. And yet, late at night, lying in my quiet house, I'd sometimes think of Noah. Wonder if he was eating enough. If he'd figured out how to do laundry without shrinking his shirts. If the silence in his apartment felt as heavy to him as it once had for me. I didn't reach out. Not yet. Some lessons need time to set. But when his birthday rolled around in May, I sent him a card. No money tucked inside, no lecture. Just a note. "You told me to find my own place. I did. Now I hope you're finding yours. Love, Mom." That was my peace offering. Small but real. Because here's the truth, the one I didn't understand until all this love without respect isn't love. It's chains. And breaking those chains, whether it's from a husband, a boss, or even your own child, isn't cruelty. It's survival. By summer, the whispers in town had shifted. No longer pity. No longer gossip. Now it was admiration. Did you hear Rachel sold the store and started over? At her age, she's tougher than all of us combined. And maybe, just maybe, I started to believe them. Rebuilding isn't flashy. It's not fireworks or confetti. It's slow mornings with coffee on the porch. It's neighbors waving, not out of obligation but respect. It's planting roses and knowing they'll bloom long after you're gone. It's peace. And in that peace, I found something I never expected: freedom. You know, I used to think stories ended when the door shut and the dust settled, when the bad ones slinked away and the crowd went home. But it turns out stories don't end there. They echo. They settle into the cracks of a life and keep shaping you long after the noise dies down. That's what happened to me. By the time winter rolled around again in Maple Falls, most folks had stopped gossiping. The fundraiser drama became a story you'd hear whispered now and then at the diner, like a cautionary tale told over coffee and pie. Vanessa had long since moved back to Columbus, slipping out of town the way smoke vanishes into air. People said she remarried quick to a man with a steady paycheck and no mother to deal with. I didn't ask, and I didn't care. Noah stayed. He kept showing up week after week carrying vegetables he didn't know how to cook, trying to prove with his hands what words couldn't quite cover. And me, I rebuilt. Slowly, deliberately. Not for revenge anymore, though Lord knows that night in the gym had been sweet. No, what I was after now was something rarer: peace, a different kind of legacy. When the Hendersons opened their hardware store, they asked if I'd speak at the ribbon cutting. Not about me, but about Frank, the man who'd believed a tiny town could be kept afloat with good wood fair prices and a handshake that meant something. So I stood there, under that bright yellow door he'd painted all those years ago, and I told the crowd, legacy isn't just what you leave behind when you're gone. It's what you refuse to let anyone take from you while you're here. And you know what? For the first time in years, I felt Frank standing beside me. Not as a ghost, not as grief, but as the strength in my spine. Afterward, Mrs. Henderson showed me the small shelf she'd set up at the front counter. On it sat my husband's old carpenter's level, polished but not erased of its scratches. Next to it, a framed note. In honor of Rachel and Frank Dunn, builders of more than a store. Builders of trust. I had to look away before the tears started. The letter in the ledger. One night, while sorting through my shelves, I pulled down the old leather ledger. I thought I'd tucked every memory into the right place already, but I felt something strange along the back cover. When I worked my nail into the seam, a folded sheet slid out, thin, yellowed, written in Frank's handwriting. For later, R. I unfolded it with shaking hands. R, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't keep time from doing what it does. Remember, you were the one who made this life work. You were the one who held it all together. Don't let anyone tell you different. If a day comes when you have to choose between being liked and being true, choose true. It will cost you something, but it'll give you back everything. I sat there at the kitchen table, the clock ticking loud, tears dropping onto the wood. That man had always known me better than I knew myself. He knew one day I'd be tested. He knew one day someone would try to shrink me. And he'd left me the answer written plain: choose true. That's when I decided the ledger didn't belong locked in my house anymore. It belonged in the light. So I donated it to the Maple Falls Historical Society. They set it in a glass case with a soft lamp overhead. Next to it, a placard that read, "A ledger isn't just numbers. It's proof that someone paid attention." And I thought, if one girl on a school trip sees that and realizes her work has value, even when the world dismisses her, that's enough legacy for me. Noah's reckoning. The hardest part wasn't Vanessa's sneer or the gossip. It was Noah. He came by one Sunday in March, his hands red from cold, a grocery sack of green beans under his arm. He set them on the counter, cleared his throat, and said, "Mom, I need to tell you something." I braced myself. I thought love meant deciding for you. I thought being a man meant taking over. But I see now I wasn't taking over. I was taking away. Your choice. Your dignity. I let him talk. I let the silence stretch afterward, because sometimes silence teaches more than scolding. Finally, I said, "You can't undo what you did, but you can grow from it. The question is, are you willing to?" He nodded, tears catching in his lashes. "I am, even if it takes the rest of my life." And for the first time since the betrayal, I believed him. Speaking to the next generation. That summer, Miss Carroll roped me into speaking at the high school. A room full of senior girls, restless and half-bored, sat staring at me like I was a substitute teacher. I told them my story, not polished, not softened. The truth. When I finished, one girl with chipped black nail polish raised her hand. "How do you know when someone's using you?" she asked. "You know, when you set a boundary and they treat it like the start of a negotiation," I said. "That's how." The room went still. I saw eyes widen. Some girl in the back whispered "damn" under her breath. And I thought, if even one of them carries that answer into her future, then none of my pain was wasted. The birdhouse. Noah brought me a birdhouse one November. Made it himself at the lumber yard. Painted it the same shade of sunshine yellow as the old hardware store door. "For your backyard," he said, embarrassed. "Thought it might look good in winter." We hung it on the maple tree near the fence. 2 days later, a wren moved in, bold as anything. I'd stand at the window some mornings, coffee in hand, and watch that little bird dart in and out. It felt like a sign. Like maybe, just maybe, something broken could still shelter life. My own place. People still stop me at the diner. Rachel, you made quite a statement, they say, nodding, like I gave a speech at the UN. Maybe I did. Maybe not. What I know is this: I stopped apologizing for existing. I stopped making myself small so someone else could stretch out. That night, in the gym, when I laid down the truth in front of the whole town, I thought that was the end. But it wasn't. It was the beginning of me finding my own place. Not a house. Not a store. Something bigger. My own place is in the way I hold myself now. The way I laugh when someone tries to call me old like it's an insult. The way I can look at my son and see both his flaws and his growth without shrinking either one. What I leave behind. So here's the lesson, if you're listening close. Love without respect is chains. Respect without love is a contract. But when you have both love and respect, that's freedom. I learned that too late for Frank. Too late for the first years with Noah, but not too late for myself. Not too late for the girls coming up after me who'll hear my story in that auditorium and decide never to let someone else write their ending. When I go, I don't want people to say she was kind. I want them to say she was true. Because being true, it cost me something, yes, but it gave me back everything. That's my legacy. Not the store, not the ledger, not even the roses blooming out back. It's the sound of my own voice, steady and unshaken, finally claiming its place in the world. And maybe if you're listening right now, you'll remember this the next time someone tries to tell you you're too much or not enough. Maybe you'll remember Rachel from Maple Falls, who was told to find her own place, and did. Not in the corner they chose for her, but in the wide, wide world she chose for herself.